All right, all right. Day after Thanksgiving, brother. How you feeling, man?
Still feeling full, my guy.
Okay, okay. I'm feeling good right now. I'm chilling. No leftovers for me right now, man.
No leftovers?
No, no, no,
Why
no, not
not?
right now. Right now, I'm just sipping on a
Come
nice
on
drink to
now.
get my energy back.
Yeah, I got a little cafecito aquí, with a little bit of equal. I got 3 equals in there, my iced coffee.
3 equals.
Mm-hmm.
What you say? You do no sugar though?
Equal, baby. It's not the same.
Nah, that sugar. I don't know. You're gonna have to take a vote on that later. I
That's
think that's
sugar alcohol. That's sugar alcohol. Stop it.
Mm.
Don't
Ladies
play
and
with me,
gentlemen,
bro.
this is the Black Friday special. No days off.
Chip,
Want to give you
chip.
an episode. If you're sitting home after Thanksgiving, all tired, relaxing, join us today. Black Friday special.
I know
We
you.
got a brief
There's always
today.
that. There's always that person that's sitting in the corner. Like,
Yeah. Everybody chilling Thanksgiving, So we named this the Black Friday special. Talking a little bit about, like we usually do, we talk politics, we talk culture, we talk even breaking news. We give our own twist to it. But today we're about to go to some interesting topics when it has to do with foreign politics, socialism, capitalism, and all these topics that I would say, when you say macho, everybody has their bias and ideas towards it. It's a big topic to cover.
oh my
Yeah,
god, yeah.
yeah, it's just a lot to cover. But anyways, today we're giving you some details on Cuba, our thoughts on it, what happened over time, and we're also giving you our thoughts on Venezuela. We'll do a segment each, and then from there, we'll do some Black Friday facts. So stay tuned for our 3 segments as we get into these topics. What we usually do, if it's your first time watching us, we break down a clip. We ask people, should the person on the clip speaking mind their business, or is it relevant what they're talking about? Do you trust what they're talking about? And I think that was a good summary. Let's go into Mind Your Business segment.
Athletic wear giant Nike and economic bellwethers, FedEx and General Mills in discussing similar concerns. The cost to ship containers overseas has soared in recent months. Getting a 40-foot container from Shanghai to New York cost $2,000 a year and a half ago before COVID. You know what it is right now? $16,000. Let me say this one more time.
Yeah.
So Costco, Nike, and FedEx saying, guys, I'm sorry, we have to raise our prices. People are like, what do you know? You're not going to raise your prices. No, I don't think you understand. These containers, when we get our stuff from Shanghai, used to cost only $2,000. We're paying 8 times more today, $16,000 a pop. The cost includes not only freight, but also.
Pause it just to give you some sneak peek on what we're about to get into. But I think this is relevant to what we're about to talk about with economies, socialism, America. But this is a current situation. We're doing the Mind Your Business segment. We'll play another few seconds and then have a vote to see what people think on this topic. All right, let's get to it again.
Also higher labor costs, rising demand for transportation and products, plus shortages in computer chips, oils, chemicals, and higher commodity prices. We can't hold on to all of those. Some of that has to be passed on to who? To us. And it is being passed on. We're pragmatic about it, said Costco CFO Richard Galanti. So basic mathematics here. You just saw what's going on. So you're asking a question, Pat, what is it? How's this so different? Bro, it's not a little bit of inflation. If something increased from $2 million to, if something increased from $10 to $12, what do you say? Whatever. If something you're buying normally goes from $10 to $15, what do you say? Dude, that's a little weird. Wouldn't you say that? Like, think about what you buy every month. Imagine if the gym membership's $50 a month. Do you complain? No. Imagine next month 24 Hour Fitness says, it's going to be $75 next month. Now, let me give you a different one. Imagine 24 Hour Fitness all of a sudden says, we know your membership's been $50 a month for the last 10 years. Effective next month is $400 a month. That's just what happened to these guys.
So right there.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
powerful when you really think about it. And I think that clip um would help a lot of people understand the overview. Again, we're not going deep into inflation today, but these are some of the effects when we have a list of lack of supplies, and different issues happening in our country, printing of money, which is another one, so there's layers to this, but the point is inflation is a serious thing, right? In terms, inflation is the money you have just goes less. Like you can do less with it. But anyways, that clip was an introduction for getting into our topic. What you vote on this, man? What you vote on? What PBD is breaking down here, man?
I vote on him not to mind his business because we need people like that to simplify these big issues into very small layman's terms, like for me to understand. Oh, effective immediately. I know you've been paying the
Mhm.
same price for 10 years, but effective immediately next month you're going to pay $400 from 50. That's an insane increase. You're going to lose
Yeah,
a lot of revenue, and that's going to cause more inflation. You get what I'm saying? So it's like,
yeah. I'm with you, man. So I'll vote that too because again, you know me, politicians on both sides. I'm a lot of times vote mind your business because of my worldview. But I don't feel like it's not a political agenda. He's breaking down from an economic perspective. I vote we need people like that to not mind his business, help the average person out there to kind of understand these issues. So I am
correct.
with you on 1,000%. Yeah. So that's it right there.
All right, in this next segment, we are doing something very different. Normally, we just open with a video or we open with a main topic, but this is kind of like a twofold. So, because it's like a twofold, we want to do something a bit different. So we're gonna do uninterrupted with one of the cast here, and there's just two. So it's me and Savory. So there's gonna be an uninterrupted with Savory and uninterrupted with Macho. And Savory's task is to explain the government or economic system of Venezuela in just 10 minutes. And I'm
Mm.
gonna do the same about Cuba in just 10 minutes. And we're gonna explain to you. Hopefully, you're able to follow, but hang in there. We got you. Without further ado, uninterrupted with Savory.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna walk you through some cool facts, dope things that I found out about Venezuela. Some I knew, some a lot. I got a bit more deep into it. So we're gonna start by how Venezuela itself, the country itself, sustains itself, how it runs their economy, and what fuels them. Pun intended. Let's get into it.
39 billion, right? You look at Libya, 48. You look at Russia, 80. You look at United Arab Emirates, 97.8. Kuwait, 101. Iraq, 142. Iran, 158. Canada, no one talks about 169. Saudi Arabia, which is what everybody talks about. They're the biggest. When you think about oil, you think about Saudi Arabia. Sheikh, you think about Prince. These are the guys that have all the oil, right? Right? It is the Middle East, right? Nope. Number one in the world is Venezuela. You ready? 300,878 times a million barrels. They are number one. U.S. is number 10. So why is it such a big mess? How is it that a country with that much oil is going through a mess today? What took place? There's two numbers we have to look at. One is oil prices. The other one we have to look at is inflation. Let's first look at oil prices. This is not just Venezuela oil.
So let me pause this, right? There's another about minute and a half I'm going to play here. But Venezuela is the number one export of oil, which means they get tons of money. Not the Middle East. You got Saudi Arabia at number 2. Then we got Canada number 3, which I had no idea. But number 1 is Venezuela, right? So with that said, we are now going into how they sustain their economy, right? And what happened, right? Because they rely too much on oil and when we also have inflation. But let's keep moving for my time. All right.
Prices. This is oil prices per barrel, right? But why oil prices? What does oil cost per barrel? And historically, what has it done? And is there a trend or something that we ought to pay attention to between Chavez and Maduro? Because when Chavez was president, people were happy. The economy was apparently doing good. Some people saying, wait a minute, we were getting a lot of free programs. I mean, why is it that under Maduro it's not working? It must be all of Maduro's fault, right? Let's look at this here. Look, oil prices today, a barrel in 2019, give or take, as of yesterday's pricing, is $52.87 today, a barrel, 2019. 2018 was 64.90, 2017 was 50.84, 2016 43.58, 2015 48.72, 2014 93.17. Why is 24 critical? From 93.17 to 48.72. Here's why it's critical. Maduro got elected in 2014. Chavez died in 2013. So when Maduro first got elected, Venezuela was still kind of okay. It had some.
You see, everything is relying on that oil barrel price for the country because they produce so much that they get so much money from them. Right?
But they were kind of okay. Why were they kind of okay? Because oil prices were still high. The moment oil prices dropped more than 50%, they could no longer fund all the public programs because 50% of Venezuela's GDP is what pays for all the free public programs.
So that's where I wanted to end that video before we go to the next. Keep in mind, 50% of their GDP, right? And let me give people a definition of GDP since I know we spoke about it. The total worth estimated in currency values of a nation's production. That's GDP, right? That includes services, sector, research, development, sales, business, service, activity, all that. It's the production of a country, right? Foreign and here, like all that trade. 50, you guys hear that? 50% of it comes from the export of oil.
Wow.
Which means they have put all their eggs in one basket, right? Think about it, if you have 50% of your life saving somewhere, right? And that life saving takes a hit, right? Think about that on a nation level. It's good, right? Venezuela is an oil giant, and it's good while the oil was in good production and the price was rising. But as soon as that price drops, what happens? 50% of your economy, half of your entire economy is now tanking, which is social programs they got, businesses. When this happened, they started taking money now from the rich, from the businesses, in order to fund what they needed. You see what happened? So socialism in Venezuela, in a way, people argue it worked, but it only worked because of the high oil price. It didn't work because they had a system that was sustainable, right? So I want people to keep that in mind, right? And this is interesting. I have a quick interview that I'll skip, but even people on the left agree that it was a lot of what Venezuela relied on. Because I went to CNN, New York Times, and I want to play this quick clip here, right?
In January, the sanctions on the state oil company were designed to stop funding Maduro's regime and their flamboyant watches. The Venezuela situation is a dumpster fire. Hands off, Venezuela advocates seem to be living on another planet.
We just returned from 2 weeks in Venezuela, and we are happy to report that there is no humanitarian crisis in Venezuela.
I'm sorry, what?
What? What? All right. Why did I want to play this clip? There's a whole movement out here that's telling us that Venezuela, it's all the United States' fault. Yes, there's sanctions, and Macho's going to get into that with Cuba and the effects of that. Yes, there's part of it, but let's always start with looking at the responsibility of the country. You can't rely 50% of your GDP providing free programs, free money, because we know damn well nothing's free. When that got hit, the U.S., by the way, was a stolen election in 2018. Most people are in agreement with that on both sides of the aisle, the UN and all that from Maduro. But the point is, there's a lot more that meets the eye than the U.S. just taking advantage of people. Right? So we have to play it in that lens, right? So right here, and then just final thoughts for what she says.
Just the crisis of U.S. imperialism.
It is true that the U.S.'s history of meddling in Latin America should give people pause, but complete inaction out of fear of the U.S. repeating its interventionist mistake from the 80s is not the answer. Hands off.
So hands off is the U.S. remaining hands off. Venezuela has nothing to do with the U.S. But again, whatever portion they played, we can talk about that in the future, some other episode. But there's the personal responsibility because I just showed you 50% of their GDP. This I found as a funny interview, to be honest, right? This is InfoWars that's extremely right-wing for disclosure purposes. And then we have someone on the left. She seems like extremely on the left. She supports Bernie Sanders. But this is not to defend InfoWars or the person. This is just to show you the state of our politics. This is what most people around the world see because we can't have a conversation because extremes show up. Check this out.
InfoWars. I think he has a lot of integrity. I like his value system. I like what
he's talking about Bernie, by the way, Bernie Sanders and Venezuela.
Stands for
Exactly what values.
Eating the rich.
Eating the rich. Well, are you aware that Bernie Sanders lives in $3 million homes?
No, I was not aware of that.
Yeah. And are you aware? I'm going to ask you something. So if they're about eating the rich, why do you think so many of the 1% support socialism?
Is that true?
It's very true.
Like who?
Well, for example, you know Venezuela, right?
Heard of it?
A majority of the country is currently eating rats while their politicians are drinking champagne on a daily basis.
But that's not the 1%.
The 1% of Venezuela.
I'm talking about America.
Well, I'm saying since if Bernie Sanders were president, right, and he wanted to bring the same ideas as for socialism into this country, do you think that we would benefit?
Yeah.
But I just told you Venezuela is eating rats.
But I just want people to have health care, honey.
I wanted to pause it there. Her response was, I just want people to have healthcare, right? So these are the conversations we have. I think InfoWars made an extreme statement. They said most people are eating rats. I don't know if that's accurate, even though they're going through hyperinflation. Part of what she says might be right. I think she made an extreme statement. But then her response is, we just want healthcare for all. You see, we can't live in a world where we expect things to be free and come out of thin air because we'll fall into the same trap that Venezuela fell in. Why? Because free money comes from somewhere. We won't get it from oil in this company, right? We're just, I think, number 10, right? We barely make top 10, but that money would come from somewhere and it will destroy other industries. So I wanted to play that to show the state of our climate, which is, I thought was hilarious, but also to show that there's a solution to all these things that don't require government intervention because we know how government intervention usually ends, you know?
And I had a question. Their sole driving force for their economy was their oil, correct?
50%.
For Venezuela.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, driving force.
So their main economic source was their value of crude oil.
Exactly. So every dollar that was circulating, 50 cents was produced from oil. So the money circulating, that's how you could think about it. The money circulating in the economy, you can bet that 50% wasn't a small business. And it was one more clip. I don't have time to play because I'm going to pass it on to you. But in this clip, they show what happened when that 50% reliance on oil, the oil barrel went down, which means their economy tanks because all their basket on that one egg, social programs started. And what they did, they went after bigger corporations. They hiked taxes on everybody. They stole money. They stole land. They just did what they needed to do to raise the money. Never a good idea. Guys, I hope you guys enjoy that segment of Venezuela. Again, there's so much to say on it. I'm sure there's a lot more thoughts that we can get into.
10 minutes. That's it.
That's just a quick overview. So hopefully you enjoyed that. But Macho, tell us a little bit about what you're getting us into, man.
I had a lot of angles I could have taken to this. I've been studying the whole idea of Cuba for years personally, and could not really find the root cause as to what happened with Cuba until actually my conversation this morning with Savory, and I went on a different road, and this is what I found. Uh, Spain owned Cuba one of the lands that Columbus first landed on was Cuba, and they took it over, and Spain particularly is they took it over, and now fast forward from there, America and Spain had a war over it during the Spanish-American War, and America won. So America took over. Then the native Cubans revolted over that takeover and lost. And what was their reaction to that? The native Cubans, they burned down all of their sugar plantations. America said, "No problem. We have enough money to fix that. And by the way, we're going to own 50 to 60% of all the business economic source here." So by all means. So I have a video clip here that shows something very significant in a very short amount of time.
Supporters landed from the yacht Granma in an attempt to start a rebellion against the Batista government. It was not until 2 years later that Castro's July 26th movement emerged as the leading revolutionary group. As the relationship between U.S. and Cuba worsened because of the promulgation of the Agrarian Reform Law between 1960 and 1964, the U.S. imposed a range of sanctions, eventually including a total ban on trade between the countries and a freeze on all Cuban-owned assets in the U.S.
I want to halt it right there because there was something about this particular situation and this conflict that I wasn't really privy to, and that was the Agrarian Reform Law, which was not an American reform, but a Spanish reform. The Spaniards wrote this agrarian reform, and the Americans took it over and continued to utilize that as the rule over Cuba. And obviously, Fidel Castro was not happy with this agrarian reform, in which it was already predicating or bending towards the favor of the conquering nation, and that was the American government. So let's finish this off.
So Macho,
Yeah.
before you keep playing this really quick, what caused the U.S. to say we're going to remain this? It was because the way Cuba was running their country they disagree with, or what they were doing to their people, any had to do with that? Really quick,
It was already laid out in terms of how they where they were running, how Cuba's because they were so far, America could not run their government for them, but yet they ruled them as a commonwealth. Think of them as Puerto Rico.
Okay, got you.
You get what I'm saying? So it's like now we got our businesses here. We're also gonna have plantations here. We're also gonna have and it's ours. We won this. We fought over it twice, and we won both times.
Cool. All right.
Later, Castro signed a commercial agreement with Soviet Vice Premier Anastas Mikoyan. The Cuban Missile Crisis occurred in October 1962. A few months later, Cuba was moving towards a full-fledged communist system modeled on the USSR. During the 70s, Fidel Castro dispatched tens of thousands of troops in support of Soviet-supported wars in Africa. The standard of living was extremely Spartan, and discontent was rife. The country faced a severe economic downturn following the withdrawal of Soviet subsidies worth $4 billion to $6 billion annually.
And so here it is. I wanted to clip it there because it totally collapsed on him. So there's some key elements there that I want to highlight as to why their economic lifestyle went down. So in this video, it only shows that America had their sanctions on them. But there, as we at Drinks with a Nobody, as we explored, there are always two sides to the coin. So I want to look at the other side of the coin here.
His return to Cuba, the first priority of Fidel's revolution was the redistribution of land through the Agrarian Reform Act. Under Batista, foreigners had owned more than 70% of the arable land.
Under Batista, I was actually undercutting it. Under Batista was 70% owned of their business or their economic system was owned by foreigners.
So
which the foreigner was us, was American.
Oh yeah. That's because Batista was a dictator who was controlled by America 100%, which is what Castro didn't like. Yeah. By the way, side note, these commentators back in the day, like those voices, why is that? Why do these commentators in the Cuba and this is back in the days? It's
that's
like
the way they spoke back then.
Anyway, go ahead. That's off topic, but let's keep going.
Most of the sugar industry was in U.S. hands. At first, quite modest land expropriations were proposed. They even included land owned by Fidel's family.
Oh, wow.
Mi padre decía, tengo un hijo estudiando para abogado para que le defienda los intereses. Y bueno, mire, el abogado fue el que firmó la ley de reforma agraria.
Besides land redistribution, the reform included healthcare, education, housing, and road building.
Down himself, right there.
So he had a great idea to look at himself within his independence, look within the country, figure out what he can do. And there's certain steps, like I said, there's other sides to the coin here that we have to investigate. We can't just look at it just from saying, well, it's America's fault why they're here and why Fidel had to do this revolution. It's not necessarily America's fault. America fought for Cuba twice and won. So we cannot speak to it from that lens. Do you agree, Savory?
So when you say America fought for Cuba, what do you mean twice? Explain that to us.
The first time they fought for Cuba was against Spain, right? Because Spain ruled over Cuba. That was their commonwealth. And they fought over it during the Spanish American War, and they won. And then they fought again against the native Cubans, and they won. So it further validated that they are the conquering nation over this land. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. But Fidel Castro wanted to separate himself from that and run his own
Correct.
regime his own way.
He wanted complete and utter independence. But he soon realized when he took this position that you can't do that in this world. Not in this world. You know what I'm saying? And it doesn't have anything to do with superpowers. It has everything to do with foreign policy. How do you work with other countries?
He, in terms, wanted to do, in short, he wanted to do what Venezuela did effectively for a few years, but he didn't have the big oil reserves or natural products. You know, they had their tobacco, they had this, but to the level of oil, no country had it, which is why Venezuela was technically able to run a socialistic, successful country for a few years. Yeah.
Exactly.
Afectó intereses de grandes compañías norteamericanas. A nosotros nos hacían la guerra por hacer la reforma agraria y en cambio después Kennedy estaba promoviendo la reforma agraria en América Latina para evitar revoluciones radicales.
Yeah, about a year after the agrarian.
So again, of course, this dictator is going to blame America because America, he's fighting against this ideology. He's fighting against their rule. He's fighting against their quote unquote imperialism or even their colonization or whatever it is that the terms that we're using today. Notice how Fidel never used that terminology then. Okay, this is what I want to make it very clear for folks out there watching. None of these language or these terms were used. Those are modernized language, colonization, imperialism. That's what we use today to describe yesterday. Again, looking at yesterday through today's lens. Okay? It's all over our history.
Farm was introduced, and some American properties, rural properties, the King Ranch and so forth, were nationalized. The Cuban government ordered the foreign refineries, two of which were American, to refine Soviet crude oil. I think their first inclination was to do it, but they were encouraged by the U.S. Treasury Department not to. So they refused. They would not refine the Soviet crude. The Cuban government then nationalized those refineries, the oil companies in Cuba. The United States retaliated for that by cutting off the Cuban sugar.
So basically, Fidel showed his hand here by saying, hey, we want America, we want you guys to refine this Russian crude oil. And he said that they were inclined to do it, but the U.S. Secretary was like, no. And there could be a number of reasons why they say no. Maybe because they freaking feel like it. I'm going to go as far as that. They're the ruling country. We feel like it. I don't care. We're not going to refine somebody else's and some other country's oil. That's not us. We're not nobody's dojo, right? So they retaliated and by not meeting their sugar quotas, hurting them in their pockets.
So sort of one step led to another.
Cuando Fidel lee el decreto más importante de la Revolución Cubana, en su afán de controlarlo todo, la emoción de Fidel es tanta que Fidel enmudece, pierde la voz. Y aquello fue una expectación tremenda porque era ante las cámaras nacionales e internacionales y Fidel mudo delante del micrófono. Y entonces Raúl, inesperadamente, toma el micrófono y continúa leyendo el decreto de expropiación de las grandes compañías norteamericanas en Cuba.
Porque se ha ido una voz por un momento, pero ahí está él y estará.
So another highlight here to play to some people were saying, hey, people love this. People wanted this. Of course they wanted this. Everyone thinks that the grass is always greener on the other side. They see America as the problem. Remember, they revolted against them at one point. Remember, they had 70% of foreign economic business in this country. They were feeling used and abused in this country. So here you go. You got this person saying, I am for you. I want what's best for you. I want you to be in control of your agriculture, over your business, over your land. Here's what he comes. He sells the stream to them.
Compañía Cubana de Electricidad. United Fruit Company.
Do I agree with what America did? And that's a hard question to answer because I don't agree with what neither countries did. They did not sit, they did not have discussions. There was one side. I feel like pride is what destroyed Cuba. This is
Yeah.
the point of my where I'm getting at here. It's not necessarily putting all their eggs in one basket like Venezuela did,
Yeah.
but Cuba put all their eggs in one basket in their pride rather than working. You took over. Good for you. You revolted. You are the new dictator. That's awesome. That's beautiful. What are you going to do with what you have? How are you going to work with the countries that are there already? I'm not saying you bend over backwards, but you can work things out little by little. You can figure out a way to start weeding off these companies. You can start figuring out negotiations, deals, write treaties, figure those things out. But instead, Fidel Castro went in there like a hot missile, said, I'm in control. This is
Yeah.
mine, and I will decide how this works. And if you guys are fully aware of how Cuba is structured and how isolated it is, that is the worst thing you can do for your country.
Mhm.
That is the absolute worst thing you could do. Not even the superpowers can do well by themselves that way.
Yeah, and not only that, over time, the opposite happens. The world is becoming more interconnected. So we are
Correct.
relying even more on people, which is why we're having a conversation about China, US, and all that, which is why China's playing their cards and controlling a lot of Caribbean places, countries, because, they know
Correct.
the world is interconnected. Anyways, won't get into China, but on this Cuba conversation, you're
Now
right.
let's talk
Um,
about both
um,
these countries.
yeah,
Wow.
let's talk about both of them. Good idea. Because I see some correlations, and I agree with you totally percent. There's a lot of differences, but some correlations. Cuba, it seems like their pride took them, right? And Venezuela had tremendous pride and ostracized the US as well. But again, people, big difference when you're making hundreds of billions of dollars quarterly from oil reserve. You get what I'm saying?
Mhm.
That's a different
Mhm.
ball game. That means you it's almost like you have to know what you need. And Cuba
Didn't
Cu-
have anything.
yeah, Cuba
Cuba didn't have anything. They had no
Yeah.
sources that were their own. They literally stole it all. And they say to them, and anyone watching this say, no, that was theirs. It was on their land. No, this was American. This belonged to them. Okay? When you
So
fight a
this belongs
war,
to America how? Because America fought
because
for them?
70% of their companies were theirs. And Fidel, what I just showed there, he took it over. He says, "All right, screw it." When they went through that whole back and forth,
Mhm.
and then Cuba's Americans stopped halt, or they put a halt to their sugar quota. They stopped sending them money. They stopped selling their sugar. Everything. Okay. Here's the problem. Now people would say, "Well, why couldn't America bend a knee? Why? It's their country. This is what correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know how to nuance this a bit better. It's theirs. If you fought and people died to fight
So
for
you're
this,
saying Cuba is America's country?
Cuba's America's Commonwealth, correct?
Yeah, I kind of don't agree with that, right? I'm thinking
Okay.
through this. I don't think it's their country. I understand where Fidel's come from, but his pride did take him over. I agree with that, but I see where he was coming from because when you have the U.S. again under Batista, the person he fought against and brought in a whole different kind of system, which was in a way as oppressive. He wanted to bring his own revolution with bringing Cuba back. That's what he kind of ran on. Independence of Cuba, we can do it our own and all that. The problem is he couldn't really do that without the US. But the US also, from what I've learned over time, they were kind of just taking a little more, right? They kept bullying them more and more, which again, like you said, this is the world we live in. You know what I'm saying? Like this is how it works when you're a superpower. But at the end of the day, you see the speech you showed, that was a sweeping overnight, every business get out of my country. That was crazy what he did. It wasn't slowly, it was no negotiation. So that was to his fall. So I agree with that. But yeah, I see where he was coming from because the US had way too much control. It's almost like the control that US has over Puerto Rico, but doesn't really help their people in a way. I don't know what you think of that. So because I think that's the odd relationship Puerto Rico and US.
Here's what we're not understanding about a commonwealth. When you're a commonwealth, this is literally a transactional relationship. This has nothing to do with governance. Where the governance, see, Batista and Fidel's job is to govern. That's your job. But what we have, me and you, I'm the superpower, you're the little country. What we have is purely transactional. But you cannot define me on that transaction because I'm the power. I'm the source. So this is where
I'm the connect.
Exactly. You do not go against you don't go against the plug, period. And when you go against the plug, you will reap the consequences of that. It hurts. And it hurts bad. And we can sit here as the little guy, Savory, and say, oh, that's not right morally. This has nothing to do with moral. If the shoe could be on the other foot, where's Fidel's morals in honoring the previous agreements? Where you can't, for example, a new president that comes in literally has to write an executive order, right? Canceling the previous administration's actions. That has to stand the test of time. Meaning, now that has to get fought over in Congress. Now that has to get fought over in the Supreme Court. No sitting president could just come in and go, yeah, I'm doing away with this. No, it doesn't work like that. You could write an executive order. It could be a temporary thing, but it's not upheld. It's not permanent. A lot of the things that these presidents write as an executive of order just buys their administration time to do what they want. That's it. It has nothing to do with long-term solution or long-term significance. So again, I understand it. It may sound harsh from what I'm saying, but Cuba was not belonging to them in that way, in the way that they thought it belonged to them.
So what you're telling the people, Macho, is Cuba. This is what people are hearing, all right? I'm gonna tell you what people are hearing.
Yeah, tell me.
Giving people a reality check. You're giving them the reality of what was going on, and in turn, people are hearing is Cuba should have no interest in their freedom as a separate nation because they're already a commonwealth with the U.S.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. No. Let me clear that up. They are free. That is part of their governance. And
well, in their governance, they're not free according to the system they're running, but it's the same excuse the U.S. would use to, you see, the hypocrisy of the U.S., I believe, too, was they would use the excuse that Cuba's not free because of the government they're running. No. They'll say that to Castro. That's part of what they'll do, too, for embargoes, no?
No. The embargoes happened because he went against the treaty. He went against the whole Aragon, the Aragon, the reform law.
That's when it first started, the embargo? Because that's good to know.
Well, the embargo started, it started early during Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, all those guys, Teddy and then FDR, and then it kept going down the line and it got worse over time. So again, these are punishments. America had no interest in fighting another war with Cuba because how would that look optically? That wouldn't look good. So here's another way we can mess you up. Money. We can mess you up with money. We can mess you up with trade. We can mess you up in all those ways, which is what we do with Russia all the time.
Yeah, it's what
You,
they
you
did
get what I'm
with
saying?
and
So
you know, and
where simply what I'm saying is it has nothing to do with morals. It has everything to do with you are free. If you're not free, talk to Fidel. But if you're having trouble economically, talk to Fidel again because he's interrupting the already pre-existing deals we had in Cuba. See, the Cuban people were probably looking at this from a perspective of the way the Spaniards or the way the Americans as conquistadors. Rather, they should be looking at it as, okay, this is the governing authority. This is how it is now. How can we leverage ourselves with the conquering nation, right? So if I was in that situation,
yeah, I see what you're saying.
how can we as peasants get together and say, "Hey, America, we would like to have higher wages for the work."
Pride didn't
If
let them
not,
do that though.
if not, if
Fidel
not,
Castro is a horrible negotiator, and
oh, he was terrible.
it
Remember, it was
proves
his
that
way.
no
It
one
was
can
his way or
win.
the highway.
Yeah.
But I'm talking more about the peasantry before we got to Fidel. How about you go up to the American and say, "Hey, look, I'm willing to do the work. Can you raise our wages?" Or if you don't want to do that, we'll strike. What are you gonna do? Send the military people to do all the work? What are you gonna do? Send Americans here to do
What
all the
you're
work?
saying is, okay, I'm with you. Actually, you see, that's a better. I wanted to get that out of you so people can see the details. So that's
Yeah.
great right there because what you're saying is you had an agreement and it wasn't perfect. The U.S. had its faults, but the way you go about it should have been more strategic, right? You should have done some of the
More
things that
diplomatic.
you
More
get more
diplomatic on both
diplomatic.
sides.
Is the word. It's the word.
On
Yeah.
both
Yeah, that's a
sides.
great point. And
They
then
failed.
also to tie it back to Venezuela again, pride also was a big thing for Venezuela because when they were going through this in 2018, when Trump was president, they wanted no help from the U.S. They
Right.
were burning flags, you know, so it becomes a pride thing in between these two nations in relation to U.S. because a lot of these nations are trained to hate the United States by
Yeah.
their leadership. You know what I'm saying? The propaganda and all,
It's
they're
cool
trained
now.
to do that. So
It's
and
cool.
then it's
Since
reached
the
America in
Vietnam
many
War,
ways.
Sadie,
Yeah.
since the Vietnam War, it's been cool to hate America.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
been hip. It's like rebelling, and that's where we're gonna witness the implosion. Because when your own citizens hate you, forget about the foreign countries. When your own citizens hate you, how are you
Mhm.
going to defend this country?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's where okay. And then again, no one's seeing how Venezuela's going crawling to China and begging them for help, and China's taking advantage of them. No one's calling them the colonists. No one's
Yeah, yeah.
calling them the
China. Yeah, yeah,
imperialists.
guys. And we want to also leave people with some of those thoughts here when it comes
Yeah.
to China. Take a look at the countries in the Caribbean and in many places that China is taking over, but nobody says nothing about. All right, 'cause these superpowers always do that, right? U.S. doesn't because that's how the world works, unfortunately. You know, and people don't like to hear it. Yeah.
If you want a perfect world, I don't even know where we even start with that. I don't.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Sip on Facts. Today is Black Friday. If you're doing some shopping, most people do it online. If you're catching this on your phone on YouTube, take a listen to some of these interesting Black Friday history and facts. All right. So the term Black Friday originated in Philadelphia in the early 1960s. Philadelphia police gripped about the congested streets clogged with motorists, pedestrians heading to the Army Navy football game looking for deal post Thanksgiving, calling it Black Friday, according to some history. What is Black Friday? The term Black Friday was coined in 1960 to mark the kickoff to the Christmas shopping season. Black refers to the stores moving from red to the black. Back when accounting records were kept by hand, the red ink indicated a loss, the black a profit. One more thing. Why did Black Friday become so popular? As retailers began to realize they could draw big crowds by discounting prices, Black Friday became the day to shop. Even better than those last minute Christmas sales, some retailers put their items up for sale on the morning of Thanksgiving. Again, today's Black Friday, but we wanted to share those thoughts in the heels of Venezuela, Cuba, and looking at our free market. These
That's
kind of
right.
things of deals don't exist. Why? Because they already convinced everybody that life is a deal. Everybody should buy at the same price. Everybody should live the same way. So what deal are you really going to look for? There's no deals. But in a capitalistic society, this is a beautiful thing, Black Friday, because people get goods and services at a cheaper rate because the business wins. They get more volume. The consumer wins. they're able to shop more. So it's a thing that was branded, and that wouldn't exist otherwise if it wasn't for the free market. My bias is out there, free market till I die. So
free market, baby.
I'm not hiding it, but
all right,
take us through that rundown, brother.
Let's tell the folks if they made it this far where they can find us. Follow us on Twitch at MachoFix88 and at Savory_Edition. We also have our same handles there on Twitter. We have our same handles there on TikTok. We have good content there. Follow us on Instagram. We're trying to build the community there. Drinks with a Nobody. Also on Discord to continue the conversation. And if you miss any of our previous broadcasts, and you're probably watching us also on YouTube, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Click that notification bell so when we go live, you know it. That's right. And thank you for joining us on Black Friday today.
Yeah.
We appreciate that.
Friday. Have a great week. And also hit that like. Help us with the algorithm. Go back, listen to some episodes. Leave your comments and feedback. Much love. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Have a great weekend. Until Monday.